If marriage was a sacred contract, then mine was scribbled in disappearing ink and signed during a blackout. You ever notice how a woman's moaning tone changes when she's talking on speakerphone, but forget she's connected to the car Bluetooth? That's how I learned that yoga class ran late, now involved heavy breathing and someone named Kyle who apparently makes her feel alive again. And let me tell you, there's nothing quite like hearing your wife of 12 years ask someone else if they like it when she leaves the socks on, while your kids are in the backseat arguing over McNuggets. It started on a Thursday evening, the kind of boring, gray-ski day where nothing interesting is supposed to happen. I was driving the kids home from school and she was supposed to be at her yoga class like usual, which I knew meant wine and gossip at her best friend Tara's apartment. But routine has a smell. And that day, it reeked of cheap cologne and desperation. We had barely turned onto our street when her voice came blaring through the car speakers, raw and breathless, mid-giggle. God, I can't believe I'm doing this. What if he finds out? And then a man's voice, chuckling, he won't. He's clueless. I didn't flinch. The kids were too busy in their own world to notice, but I locked eyes with the rearview mirror and smiled, just faintly. Clueless? I shifted the car into park and mentally penciled in a funeral for my marriage. I said nothing when we walked through the door, and she greeted us like nothing happened, her hair damp, not from sweat but from a rushed rinse. I just kissed her cheek and told her I was thinking about planning a weekend trip, just to get away from everything. She smiled. You deserve it, she said. The irony almost knocked me out. I began laying the bricks that night, not with rage, but precision. You see, men like me don't scream. We calculate. The betrayal wasn't what broke me, it was how sloppy she had become. Her lies weren't even good anymore. A gym bag left in the hallway, with no workout clothes but a pair of red lace panties rolled into the corner pocket. A room key to a hotel I'd never stayed in. But the detail that snapped something inside me? It was the toothpaste. She always pressed from the bottom like a civilized human. But this time, it was squeezed right from the middle, fast, careless, someone else's routine etched into her muscle memory. That told me more than 1,000 texts ever could. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. What I needed was truth, not for me, but for our kids. She had chosen to destroy the foundation of our home, but I'd be damned if I let her do it in the shadows. The kids idolized her. She was the bedtime story queen, the birthday cake architect, the cool mom who knew all the TikTok dances. But they deserved the truth, and I knew exactly how to deliver it, not with violence, not with venom, but with undeniable clarity. So I called my brother and asked him if the kids could stay over Saturday night. Told them I had a business trip and their mom needed a quiet night. She didn't even blink. She kissed me goodbye at the door that evening, whispered, "I love you," and told me to drive safe. I resisted the urge to laugh. I parked 2 blocks away, waited until the house was completely dark except for the familiar flicker of the hallway nightlight. Then I circled back to my brother's, picked up the kids and said there had been an emergency, something about a work issue. They were sleepy but cooperative. We drove in silence. As we pulled into the driveway, the house looked like every other night. Calm, safe, ordinary. I held my finger to my lips, told the kids to be quiet so we could surprise Mom. The excitement in their eyes twisted something in my gut, but I didn't let it show. We opened the door, stepped inside quietly. Her purse was thrown lazily on the living room couch. A trail of clothing led like breadcrumbs to the bedroom. The door was cracked. Light spilled through. And there, in our bed, was the mother of my children, tangled with a man who wasn't me, moaning softly as she dragged her nails down his back. My son dropped the teddy bear he still secretly brought to sleepovers. My daughter whispered, "Mom." The silence that followed was biblical. She gasped, scrambled for the sheets, her eyes wide, mouth stammering nonsense. The guy froze, then bolted like a thief into the night. I stood at the doorway, arms crossed, letting the image soak into their minds like ink on paper. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. I looked at her and said, "Let's go, kids. We've seen enough." And we walked out, her screams chasing us down the hallway, trying to reel back the pieces of a mask she'd worn too long. But the damage was done. They saw her now. Not the bedtime queen, but the liar in the bed. The thing about slow deaths is they don't announce themselves, they drip. One drop at a time. At first, it was nothing. Just the usual chaos of marriage and kids and late-night dishes. We were fine, or at least, I thought so. I'd wake up every morning, kiss her on the forehead while she pretended to sleep, pack the kids' lunches, and head to work with the kind of mundane confidence only a man secure in his home can afford. She was the same. Mostly. She still smiled at me when I came home, still asked about my day, still curled up beside me on the couch like we were writing some quiet love story in between commercials and spilled juice boxes. But then the details started changing. Small, precise ones, like someone nudging the furniture half an inch out of place just to mess with your head. She started going to the gym again. Nothing unusual, she always talked about getting back into shape after the second kid. But this time, it was different. She was religious about it. 4 times a week, sometimes 5, always in the evenings. I told her I admired her discipline. She said she was doing it for herself, which I respected, even though she used to say she worked out because she wanted to live longer for us, for the kids. The playlist on her phone changed, too. No more acoustic love songs or cheesy 2000s pop. Suddenly it was hard EDM, deep house remixes, stuff she used to roll her eyes at. It gets me in the zone, she said. Whatever that meant. Then there were the books. At first, I was glad she was reading again. She used to devour novels before motherhood turned her brain into mush, as she liked to put it. But these weren't novels. They were self-help guides, spiritual manifestos, books about feminine energy, boundaries, soul journeys. Titles like Untamed, Radical Awakening, and The Power of Saying No. I laughed and called it a midlife crisis. She didn't laugh back. She told me I needed to learn how to honor her space. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I nodded anyway. Then she started disappearing. Not physically at first, just emotionally. Her texts got shorter. Her eyes wandered when I spoke. We used to share everything from grocery lists to childhood trauma, but suddenly her thoughts were locked behind walls I didn't even know existed. She stopped asking me to help with dinner, started eating before I got home. Once, I came in and found her already done eating with the kids, earbuds in, watching some TED talk about finding your truth. I kissed her cheek, and she flinched like I was a stranger who'd gotten too close. Then the nights out started. Book clubs. Wine nights. Girls supporting girls, she called it. I supported her, of course I did. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife. My partner. But she never mentioned names. Never took photos. Once, I offered to pick her up so she wouldn't have to Uber alone. She said no, a little too quickly. I found receipts in the trash for places she never mentioned visiting. She'd say she was with Tara, but the receipt would say she was at a bar across town. I told myself it was harmless. I didn't want to become that guy, the suspicious, paranoid husband who couldn't let his wife have a life. I trusted her. I'd always trusted her. But then, one Saturday, I found a hoodie in the backseat of her car. Black, too large for her, and reeking of a men's cologne I'd never worn. I asked about it. She said it was just something Tara's boyfriend left during their beach trip. But she wouldn't meet my eyes when she said it, and later that night, I caught her deleting messages on her phone. She said it was to clear space. I said nothing. Social media changed too. Her profile photos became more curated. No more goofy family pics. Just polished selfies, vague captions about healing, and inspirational quotes. She made her Instagram private. I asked why, and she said she wanted a space just for her and her friends. I wasn't even upset. I was confused. She smiled at me, but her smile had no warmth. It was like a mask she forgot to remove. The only time I still saw real emotion was when she was around the kids. She laughed, played, danced in the kitchen with them, but even then, I saw her glance at her phone more than she looked at me. I told myself it was a phase. That maybe she was going through something and just didn't know how to talk about it. That we'd weather it like we always had. I held on to that belief the way a drowning man clutches driftwood. Because when you've built a life with someone, brick by brick, memory by memory, you don't just assume they're burning it down behind your back. Not unless you have proof. And even then, sometimes, you pray the fire's just in your head. The breaking point didn't come with shouting or tears or some explosive reveal. It came on a Tuesday, with the kind of clinical efficiency you'd expect from a bank statement or a coroner's report. She had been home all day, or so she said, working on her new coaching business, some vague online hustle she'd started that involved journaling and life affirmations and charging other women $300 to help them reclaim their truth. I didn't question it. I kissed her goodbye that morning like I always did, packed her favorite tea into her thermos like I always did, and left for work, the perfect husband in a collapsing diorama. But I forgot my laptop. Drove 15 minutes, realized I'd left it on the kitchen counter, and turned back around. That's all it took, 15 minutes. When I walked in, the house was quiet, eerily so. The TV was off. No music. No scent of the essential oils she usually diffused when she was creating a calm space. I moved slow, calm, almost reverent, like I was intruding on something sacred. The bedroom door was open just a crack. That's where the sound came from. Low voices. Hers and a man's. But not in person. It was a video call. I stopped just at the edge of the hallway, staying out of sight, and listened. Her laugh cut through me. Not the half-smile laugh she gave me these days, but the kind she used to say for lazy Sundays in bed. "You're such an idiot," she giggled, drawing the words out. If he ever found out, I'd have to fake a spiritual crisis or something. Distract him with tears and therapy talk. Then his voice, deep, relaxed, cocky. "He's still buying all that finding yourself crap?" She leaned closer to the camera. "He packed my lunch this morning," she whispered, giggling again. "Thermos and everything. God, I think he still thinks I'm working on a book or something." Silence. Then her voice again, lower this time, syrupy. "You should have seen his face when I told him I needed a weekend alone at the cabin to reconnect with my soul. He actually offered to stock the fridge for me. He's sweet. Stupid, but sweet." I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I just stood there, staring at the edge of the doorframe, listening to my wife tear apart the last strands of the life I thought we had. I watched her on the screen, bare shoulders, lips curled around a wine glass, telling some man how easy I was to fool. The thermos I filled, the fridge I stocked, the love I still gave, each one now just ammunition in her war of deception. And still, I said nothing. I walked backwards, slow and controlled, like a man backing away from a cliff. I didn't even close the door when I left. I sat in my car in the driveway for a full 10 minutes, hands on the wheel, eyes on the windshield, heart flatlining into something beyond anger. That's the moment I changed. That's when I stopped being her husband and became something else entirely. I stopped thinking like a man trying to save his marriage and started thinking like a man about to burn it all down with surgical precision. There was no shouting match, no dramatic confrontation. That would have been a mercy. No, I needed her to feel what I felt in that hallway, paralyzed, exposed, a mask sliding off her face with no one there to help her put it back on. I wasn't interested in revenge that screamed. I wanted it to whisper. I wanted it to echo. And most of all, I wanted the kids to know who she really was, not because I told them, but because she showed them. I drove back to work like nothing happened. When I came home that night, she kissed me hello, still tasting like someone else's approval. I smiled back, handed her the mail, and asked her about her soul work. She said it was going amazing, that she'd had a breakthrough that morning. I bet she did. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and said I was proud of her. And I meant it. Because soon, she'd be learning what true personal growth looked like, alone, without her children's love, without the comfort of my silence. I had just begun to dig the grave. All that was left was to let her lie down in it, one exposed truth at a time. I became invisible. That's the first rule of a successful hunt: disappear. Let them believe the world still works the way they want it to, that the ground is firm and the air safe to breathe. She thought she had me wrapped, duped, half-blind, and sentimental. So I gave her exactly that. I smiled more, listened more, asked questions that seemed innocent. I gave her space, nodded encouragingly when she talked about emotional clarity and needing weekends to rediscover her inner self. All the while, I was drawing a map of her lies, her patterns, her weak points. I started with the small things. One Friday morning, she told me she'd be working late, said she had a coaching webinar with clients in different time zones. I kissed her forehead, walked her to her car, waved goodbye. 15 minutes later, I logged into our Wi-Fi router from my office, remote access she forgot I had set up. Her phone disconnected from the home network at exactly 10:12 a.m., never reconnected. I logged into our joint bank account, watched the digital breadcrumbs pile up. Coffee from a boutique cafe downtown, not near her co-working space, followed an hour later by a charge from a hotel bar across town. Room service, then a spa. It wasn't the money that stung, it was the audacity. She was spending our life like it was hush money to her guilt. Still, I said nothing. I started setting calendar reminders to mark her every alibi. If she said she was with Tara, I checked Tara's socials from a dummy account I created using photos from a stock profile. A made-up Jen from an adjacent town. Tara had no idea who Jen was, and she never made her account private. Not once in 3 months did Tara's feed match the timeline of my wife's whereabouts. One Saturday, she said they were doing a silent meditation retreat. Tara posted brunch selfies with her dog and mimosas instead. I watched it all with surgical calm. I left her little trap questions like breadcrumbs laced with cyanide. Did you say you had your meeting on Tuesday or Wednesday? I'd ask, pretending I was trying to juggle the kids' soccer schedule. She'd fumble, Pause. Say, Tuesday. Yeah, definitely Tuesday. And I'd nod, knowing full well that her car had been parked behind a gym on the other side of town that entire day. Engine off, Bluetooth still connected to her phone, which meant she never left the vehicle. She sat in the dark with him, hidden, hiding, but not from me. I knew about Kyle by the time she dropped his name on a phone call, thinking she was on mute. I traced her calls through our carrier account. Burner number. Registered under a different state. I found it by looking for unknown numbers that popped up only on nights she claimed to be out with the girls. I wrote it down. Googled the number through a data broker. Kyle. Divorced. Gym owner. No kids. Lived 20 minutes from the hotel she seemed to favor. She had a type. Predictable, fragile masculinity with muscles. I almost pitied the guy. He thought he was winning. I began watching him, too. Through his business Yelp page. Through reviews. Comments. Geotags. I wasn't stalking, I was gathering evidence. I was building a picture she didn't know existed. I began taking screenshots of everything. Call logs, texts, her shifting alibis. I never confronted. I archived. I stored every lie like a predator sharpening its claws behind the brush. I even tested her loyalty in real time. Sent flowers to her co-working space from a fake admirer, just to see what she'd do. She told me it was from a grateful client. I checked her trash bin later that night. The card was unsigned. Handwriting unfamiliar. She kept the note, not the flowers. I started pretending to be forgetful. Missed key parts of her story on purpose, then asked her to repeat them a day later. Her rewrites were lazy. She didn't know I had voice memos saved of our conversations, cataloged under dates. I would listen at night, in my car, with the seat reclined, mapping out her edits like a detective builds timelines on a murder board. She stopped wearing her wedding ring. Said it was chafing her finger, but I found it one night in her purse, zipped into a small interior pocket, alongside a hotel keycard and a crumpled napkin with a heart drawn in Sharpie. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed this to unravel naturally, publicly, permanently. Her greatest weakness wasn't the cheating. It was her need to be adored. That's what I would use. I smiled more, kissed her deeper, played the loving, clueless husband to perfection. Meanwhile, every smile she gave me was one more nail in her coffin. She didn't realize she was already living in a house of glass, and I held the first stone behind my back. She thought it was a birthday dinner. That's what I let her believe. I even told her to wear the red dress, the one I hadn't complimented in over a year, the one I knew he liked because she once accidentally left a message open saying he'd almost ripped it off the last time they met. I made the reservation at the rooftop restaurant where we'd celebrated our 10th anniversary. The place with glass walls and soft jazz and a view of the skyline that made everything look more beautiful than it really was. She walked in smiling, lips painted a little too carefully, perfume a little too sweet, like she was trying to remind me of who she used to be. I stood when she arrived, kissed her cheek, pulled out her chair. She laughed nervously, asked what the occasion was. I said I just missed her. The waiter brought champagne. She looked surprised. I said nothing. I let her drink. Let her relax. Let her think this was a man trying to reignite a dead flame. 20 minutes in, I asked her about her weekend retreat. She started into her usual script: journaling, solitude, clarity. I nodded, reached into my coat, and placed a small black tablet on the table between us. The screen lit up with a tap. No sound, just the video. A clear angle from the corner of a hotel hallway. Her, in that same red dress, pressed against the wall with Kyle's hands all over her, his mouth on her neck, her eyes closed in something that looked far too rehearsed to be called passion. Her hand went to her throat. Her wine glass trembled. She looked up at me, blinking like she was waking from anesthesia. "It's not what you think," she said, instantly. I didn't respond. She reached across the table, her fingers barely brushing the edge of the tablet. "We were just talking." That was a mistake. I was confused. Still, I said nothing. She exhaled sharply, sat back. "You never paid attention to me. You made me feel invisible. Do you even know what that's like?" I met her eyes, finally. Calm, even. I know what it's like to be lied to by someone I would have died for. That shut her up for a second. She looked around, then back at me, her expression shifting to anger now. "You've been spying on me? Tracking me? What kind of man does that?" Her voice rose, just slightly. A couple nearby turned their heads. I lowered mine slightly, still smiling. "The kind of man who spent the last year learning how much of his life was fiction." She folded her arms. You know what? Maybe you deserved it. Maybe if you had listened, if you had noticed, I wouldn't have had to go somewhere else to feel like I mattered. I leaned in just slightly, my voice steady. You matter so much that I gave you the opportunity to walk away clean. You mattered so much that I let our children keep their image of you intact until now. Her eyes widened. What do you mean, until now? I didn't answer. The tablet screen lit up again. Photos now. Screenshots. Hotel receipts. Messages from Kyle. My phone buzzed in my pocket, right on time. I looked down, then showed her the screen. A group chat I'd started 30 minutes ago. Her parents. Her sister. A few mutual friends. All of them now had access to the same folder of evidence. She gasped. Her mouth opened, closed, like a fish dropped on the dock. You didn't, she whispered. They don't need to see this. I tilted my head. But they do. Because they were part of the illusion too. Just like me. She stood up. Knocked her chair back. Her face was pale now. You bastard, she hissed, loud enough to draw real attention this time. I stayed seated. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Careful, I said softly. Every word you say right now will shape the way your children remember this night. That stopped her cold. Her shoulders sank. Her lip trembled. For the first time, I saw fear. Real, uncut fear. The kind you can't fake with therapy terms or vague excuses. She sat down slowly, hands trembling in her lap. I reached for the champagne and poured her a fresh glass. Then one for myself. She didn't touch hers. The jazz played on, soft and ironic, and the city lights blinked around us like eyes waiting for the end of a show. She looked at me, small now, deflated. What happens next? She whispered. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch. I wanted her to feel the weight of every second she thought she'd gotten away with it. That depends, I said, voice like glass, on whether you're ready to stop pretending you're still the victim. Her throat moved in a dry swallow. I didn't leave. Not yet. The tension wasn't done working its way through her bones. I wanted her to feel it settle there, permanent, like a ghost she'd never be rid of. She called me the next morning. I let it ring 6 times before I answered, just enough to make her doubt whether I would at all. Her voice cracked before she spoke, the kind of breathless urgency people fake when they realize the ambulance isn't coming fast enough. Can we talk? She asked. I said nothing. Just silence. That was the first blow more brutal than any curse I could have thrown at her. She started slow, playing the guilt card. I know I messed up, but you have to understand, I was drowning. I didn't feel seen. You were so busy with work, the kids, your routines. You weren't present. I still didn't respond. I waited. Let her fill the silence. I needed to feel alive, she continued, her voice trembling. And Kyle, it wasn't about love. It was a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake. Still nothing from me. She started to panic. Don't just sit there. Say something. I'm telling you the truth now. I finally exhaled. Calm. Measured. You weren't looking for life. You were looking for attention. That's not the same thing. The line went quiet. Then came the shift. Oh, so now you're some kind of therapist? Is that what this is? You think you're better than me because you can sit there in your little silent throne and pretend you're above it all. She was trying to rattle me. It didn't work. No, I said. I just stopped caring about your performance. Her breath caught. She didn't expect that. That her tantrum wasn't even entertaining anymore. She switched gears again, harder this time. You smothered me. You planned every moment of our lives like I was a cog in your precious little schedule. Soccer practices, grocery lists, weekend trips. You were a prison with a picket fence. I didn't argue. I didn't defend. I just said, funny. You never wanted out until you found someone else's bed. She hissed like I slapped her. You're disgusting, she spat. Cold. Emotionless. This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man. I smiled to myself. No, it wouldn't have happened if you were a real wife. Silence again. Then a laugh. Sharp, cracked, bitter. God, you really think you're so righteous, don't you? Sitting on your little pile of evidence, thinking that makes you strong. You're pathetic. You have no idea what it's like to be desired, to feel wanted. I had to go find that on my own, because you sure as hell weren't giving it. I leaned back in my chair, looked out the window at the yard I mowed every Sunday while she lied to my face. If you needed validation that badly, you could have just taken up modeling, I said. At least then you'd be lying for money, not for free. That's when she started to cry. Or pretend to. I couldn't tell anymore. It was all blurred, this mess of mascara and manipulation. Don't do this, she said, voice breaking. Don't let this destroy everything we built. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. Please. I'll change. I'll do whatever you want. I waited. Let the silence devour her desperation. You won't change, I finally said. You'll just get better at hiding. She started sobbing harder now, full performance mode. What about the kids? What are you going to tell them? That their mother is a whore? That you were perfect and I ruined everything? I stood, walked slowly to the window, watched our daughter's bicycle sway in the wind. I'll tell them the truth, I said, and I'll let them decide who ruined what. She screamed then, raw and furious. You heartless son of a bitch. You think they'll love you when they realize how cold you are? You think they'll thank you for tearing this family apart? I almost laughed. I'm not tearing anything apart. I'm just stepping away from the wreckage you created. The call went quiet. I heard her breathing. Heavy, panicked, humiliated. She knew it. She felt it in her bones now. I wasn't angry. I wasn't begging. I wasn't even interested. And that terrified her more than any insult ever could. She lost control of the one thing she always counted on, my loyalty, my silence, my restraint. Now she was the one drowning. In her lies. In her own reflection. In the echo of a man who used to love her and now didn't even flinch when she screamed. I let the silence hold her a moment longer, then said, You'll be getting the papers next week. You can cry on Kyle's shoulder. Assuming he hasn't already seen what I sent him. And then I hung up. She didn't call back. Revenge isn't an explosion, it's a sequence. Precise. Cold. Controlled. I didn't wake up the next day with fury in my chest or some burning need to scream into the wind. I woke up with clarity. And once that switch flips in a man, once the love dies and he's left only with a blueprint of what once was, what's left isn't chaos. It's order. So I started with the foundation. I gathered everything. Every photo, every message, every receipt, every timestamp, every phone record. I downloaded our carrier logs, bank statements, location data, cloud backups, even metadata from her own laptop, which I knew the password to because she never bothered changing it. Her arrogance was my ally. She never imagined I'd look, let alone understand what I was looking at. I built a digital dossier that made her betrayal undeniable, timestamped down to the second. I backed it all up twice. One on a physical drive locked in my office. The other, uploaded to a secure cloud folder linked only to my private legal account, the credentials of which were written in a sealed envelope now sitting with my lawyer. Then I visited the bank. Quietly, calmly. I removed her access to our joint savings, locked down the kids' college fund, and opened a new account in my name only. I transferred all automatic payments and assets under my legal authority. She wouldn't notice immediately. I left just enough money in the joint account to keep appearances up, to lull her into thinking nothing had changed. Then I met with the attorney. Not some ambulance chaser. I found a man with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. One who specialized in high-conflict divorce and asset protection. I showed him the evidence. We didn't waste time. I filed for divorce under grounds of infidelity with intent to pursue full custody. The custody filings were airtight. School records, witness testimonies, scheduling documentation showing I was the primary parent by all metrics. I logged every soccer practice, every dentist appointment, every parent-teacher conference where she was too busy finding herself to show up. Then came the social dismantling. Her parents were first, staunchly conservative, reputation-obsessed people who thought their daughter married a saint. I sent them a short email. No rage. No judgment. Just facts. I attached 5 photos and a scanned statement of the hotel receipts. I ended it with a simple line. I thought you should know the truth before the kids ask you what happened. They didn't reply, but I know they saw it. Her mother blocked her that night. Then I sent a similarly crafted email to 3 of her closest friends, the ones she used as cover stories when she said she needed girl time. They were smart enough to read between the lines. One responded, I had no idea. I'm sorry. Another didn't respond, but unfollowed her on every platform within hours. I didn't have to ruin her social circle. I just showed them what she really was, and they did the rest. Then I got to work on the real damage, the professional kind. I knew she just pitched herself for a coaching opportunity with a wellness platform. Some influencer-branded healing network that promised self-growth and authenticity. I submitted an anonymous tip to their contact form. I attached a few key screenshots. Her dirty messages to Kyle, her bragging about lying to me, her mocking references to crying on command, and milking the victim card. It didn't take much. They emailed her the next day thanking her for her interest, but declining to proceed. She never knew why. Then I turned to logistics. I removed her from the car title. It was under my name, and the financing was solely under my credit. I reclaimed it while she was at brunch, keys gone, access revoked via app control. She came out of the restaurant to find it missing and called me, panicked. I told her calmly, check the name on the registration. She didn't respond, just hung up. I canceled her credit card, one she only had because it was linked to my account. I transferred utilities out of both our names into mine, then scheduled a shutoff for the apartment she'd been secretly renting. Turns out she used my credit to get approved. I reported the unauthorized application. Lease revoked. Final nail? The kids. I didn't hide anything from them, but I didn't poison their minds either. I gave them space. Let them see her inconsistencies for themselves. They asked why Mom was crying a lot lately. I told them, sometimes, when you lie too much, the truth catches up with you. That's all. I made sure they were safe, cared for, and unconditionally loved by me. She tried calling my daughter late at night, sobbing into the phone, saying your dad is turning you against me. My daughter, God bless her, said, no, you did that yourself. Every move I made, every quiet step I took, wasn't about revenge in the emotional sense. It was correction, a rebalancing of reality. She thought she had time, that I'd grieve, rage, spiral. What she never expected was surgical annihilation. And as she scrambled in the ashes, I just kept moving forward, without her, beyond her, above her. The final act came on a Sunday, the kind that starts deceptively peaceful, warm coffee, clear skies, and the scent of fresh-cut grass. She didn't know it yet, but it was the day her carefully constructed fantasy imploded. We had agreed, at her suggestion, of all things, to attend her niece's birthday party together, for the kids, she said, probably imagining it as a show of strength, of maturity. She still clung to that illusion that if we played nice in public, people would forgive her, forget the cracks. But the thing about facades is they only hold if no one tugs on the edge. And I'd already pulled the entire thing down. Her entire family was their parents, siblings, cousins, friends of friends. People she hadn't seen since our wedding. She wore a white blouse and that too-sweet smile, clinging to a version of herself that no longer existed. As we walked into the backyard, all eyes turned. Conversation slowed, faces tightened. She didn't notice at first. She was too busy trying to play hostess, floating from person to person with a tray of cupcakes, speaking in that overly cheerful voice that sounded like sugar overwrought. But one by one, they peeled away. Her mother looked at her, then turned without a word. Her father didn't even make eye contact. Her sister, who once defended her through every drama, stared like she was looking at a stranger. Then came the silence, the kind that's louder than shouting. She kept smiling, kept trying. Hey, you good? She asked her best friend, Rachel, who used to be her co-conspirator, her shoulder, her secret keeper. Rachel gave her a long look and simply said, I saw the messages. No more. No less. The smile on my wife's face twitched, like a puppet string had just snapped. What? She asked, breathless. What messages? But Rachel was already walking away, crossing the yard toward me. She hugged me, held it just a moment longer than she needed to. My wife's eyes locked onto us, and for the first time, I saw it. Fear. Not panic. Not anger. Fear. Because the room was no longer bending to her narrative. It was bending to mine. Then her cousin approached, tall, quiet, used to be neutral in every family fight, and handed her a folded printout. Her hands trembled as she opened it. A screenshot. One of many. The message thread between her and Kyle where she called her marriage a suffocating routine and said, he's like wallpaper, always there, always boring. Her voice cracked. Who gave you this? She asked. But no one answered. Because they all had it. I'd made sure of that. Not in some public shaming post or a viral scandal. Just a quiet group message, sent the night before, with a calm note. You all deserve the truth. This is what she's been doing. These are her words. These are the facts. No commentary. No rage. Just proof. And now, standing in the backyard of the family she once used to shield herself from consequences, she was alone. Truly, visibly, undeniably alone. Her aunt turned away. Her brother crossed his arms and looked at me with a nod, small, but real. Then came the real knife, Kyle. I knew he'd show. She invited him. Said she wanted to introduce him slowly as part of her new chapter. What she didn't know was that I'd already sent him everything, screenshots of her mocking him behind his back, laughing about how easily he gave her money, how desperate he was to feel like her savior. He arrived with his usual smugness, wearing a cheap cologne that hit you like regret. He walked up to her, smiling until he saw me. Until he saw her face. "We need to talk," he said, voice low, cold. She pulled him aside, whispering furiously. I watched from a distance, arms crossed, calm. He gestured wildly, held his phone up. Her eyes darted toward me, and that's when I saw it, that final shattering. The mask didn't slip. It fell. She lunged after him, grabbing his arm, whispering desperate, frantic things. He shook her off and walked away without another word. She turned back, and for a second, it looked like she might collapse. But no one stepped forward. Not her mother. Not her best friend. Not even her own children, who were sitting beside me, unaware of the full weight of the moment, but old enough to feel the tension thick in the air. She looked around, breathing shallow, hands twitching at her sides like she didn't know what to do with them. Then her eyes found me. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just looked at her. She opened her mouth to speak, maybe to beg, maybe to scream, maybe to blame, but nothing came out. Just a small, broken sound like air slipping through a crack. I stayed exactly where I was, silent, steady, unmoved. She saw it then, not just the loss of her reputation or her affair crumbling, but the one thing she truly couldn't bear, my indifference. The fact that I wasn't angry, that I didn't care enough to fight, that she no longer had the power to affect me in any meaningful way. That was what broke her. Not the evidence, not the silence. Me, watching her fall and doing nothing to catch her. It happened 2 weeks after the birthday party fallout, at her parents' house during what was supposed to be a family reconciliation dinner, her idea, pitched as a last-ditch attempt to show maturity, to model respect for the kids. She wanted peace, or at least the illusion of it, and her parents, still reeling from the fallout, agreed to host. I knew what she was doing, trying to stage-manage the aftermath, craft a narrative where she could still wear the costume of the wronged woman misunderstood by the man who emotionally abandoned her. I brought the kids, dressed well, kept my face composed. She walked in late, all smiles and hand waves, dressed like she thought this was a PR stunt instead of the fallout of her own sabotage. It was civil at first, tense, but civil until Kyle showed up. Yes, she invited him, as if she still thought she could control the optics. As if walking in with the man she betrayed me for, in front of both our families, was somehow going to prove a point. Her father's jaw locked. My sister whispered, "She can't be serious." My son asked, "Is that Mom's new boyfriend?" And that's when the temperature dropped. I stood up. She looked at me like I was the one ruining the evening. "Don't do this," she said sharply, her voice already cracking. "Let's just eat, please." But the dam was already breaking. "You bring him here," I said, my voice low, steady, slicing through the room, "to dinner with your children, your parents, after everything you've done? You think this is reconciliation?" She stepped forward, eyes wild now, her composure unraveling. "You don't get to act like the victim anymore. You shut me out for years, made me feel like a ghost in my own house. I needed something real. I needed someone who actually saw me." She gestured toward Kyle like he was some prize. I turned to the room. She needed to be seen. So she left the house every weekend to be seen in hotel lobbies, bar bathrooms, the back seat of her lover's car, while I made pancakes for the kids and covered for her lies. Her mother gasped. Her sister looked away. Kyle shifted uncomfortably, then tried to speak. "Look, man, I didn't know the full STO. I cut him off with a stare. You knew she was married. You knew she had kids. You didn't care. Now you get to see what happens when the lights come on." My wife's voice pitched up. "Stop trying to paint me like I'm some monster. I made mistakes. So did you. You're not some saint. You were boring. You were predictable. You were safe, and I hated it. I stepped closer, enough for the room to hold its breath. And yet you begged me to love you, to save you, to protect you from your own chaos. You weaponized our kids. You wore my loyalty like armor and stabbed me through it. You don't get to play misunderstood now." She was crying now, but it was rage more than remorse. "You act like you're so above it all. But you're just bitter. That's what this is. You wanted to punish me because I stopped needing you." I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. No. I wanted to show you what it feels like when someone finally stops playing along with your fantasy. You mistook patience for weakness. You mistook silence for stupidity. And now you're mistaking the consequences for cruelty. Her father stood up, voice trembling. "Is this true?" She didn't answer. Just looked around the room, breath shallow, lips parted, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Her carefully built world was crumbling in real time, and she had no script for this version of the story. Kyle stepped back, clearly wanting to bolt but frozen by the weight of the moment. People were whispering. Someone in the back had their phone out. My sister stepped in front of our kids, shielding their view without saying a word. "I gave you everything," she cried, reaching toward me like it would somehow fix it. "Years of my life. My body. My loyalty," I laughed once, dry and sharp. "You gave me nothing but a pretty lie and a knife in the ribs. You didn't lose me. You threw me away and hoped I'd stay in the trash." Her voice broke entirely then. Please stop. You're humiliating me." I tilted my head. "No, you did that. I just made sure everyone saw it." She collapsed onto the nearest chair, hands covering her face, sobbing like the performance might buy her one last ounce of sympathy. But no one moved. No one comforted her. Not her parents. Not Kyle. Not even her best friend, who stood in the corner looking like she'd just watched a train wreck in slow motion. I walked toward the kids, took them by the hands, and looked back one last time. She looked up, broken, pleading with her eyes. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The silence was louder than anything I could have screamed. And when I turned my back, it wasn't to leave her, it was to leave the ashes of the woman she used to pretend to be. She lost the house first. The mortgage was in my name, and after the divorce finalized, the court awarded me full custody of the kids and exclusive rights to the property. She fought, begged, tried to twist the narrative in front of the judge, but the evidence buried her. They didn't even need to see all of it, just enough to see her for what she was. Then came the job. Her coaching gig dried up almost overnight. Clients disappeared. Her name, once plastered all over spiritual wellness forums, vanished from search results. The platform she'd been trying to partner with pulled her profile without a word. I didn't have to say anything. Her own words, her own messages did the work for me. One of her empowered sisterhood friends forwarded the screenshots around after realizing she'd been lied to about me, about Kyle, about everything. Her social media turned into a ghost town. Posts with 0 likes. Comments turned off. She tried to delete everything and rebrand under a new name, but the stain followed her like a shadow that wouldn't let go. Her friends stopped returning her texts. The women she used to gossip with, drink wine with, play victim to, they blocked her. Pretended not to see her at the grocery store. One even crossed the street with her stroller when she saw my ex-wife coming. I heard from a mutual friend that she moved to a smaller town about 2 hours away. She took a job as a receptionist at a chiropractor's office. Not exactly the transformational life coach brand she built her ego on. Kyle? He ghosted her the day after the confrontation. Blocked her number, deleted their photos, and never spoke to her again. Turns out his gym clients didn't like the idea of being trained by a homewrecker, either. She tried to contact his ex-wife to plead her case, some bizarre attempt at solidarity. That didn't go well. Her own family, her parents, her sister, even her cousin who once idolized her, cut her off entirely. Her father wrote her a letter, 3 sentences long. "You disgraced your vows. You lied to all of us. You are not welcome here." I framed it. Not out of spite, just as a reminder of how fast reality hits when you build your life on sand. The first message came 3 months after I went silent. She emailed me late one night. "I'm sorry for everything. I still love you. I was lost. I was stupid. I want to come home." I didn't reply. The second message came a week later. "Please, just talk to me. The kids need their mother. I need my family." I replied with 3 words. "You made yours." She didn't write again for a while. Then one day, just after Christmas, she showed up at the house. She looked older, thinner, paler, mascara smudged like it hadn't been fully washed in days. She stood on the porch, hands shaking, clutching a photo album I hadn't seen since our daughter's first birthday. "Please," she whispered when I opened the door. "Please, I have nothing left. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. Just let me sit. Just talk." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I looked at her the way you look at something once treasured that's now unrecognizable, like a burned-out home where you once kept your memories. She started crying harder then, choking on her own breath, falling to her knees on the doormat like it might absorb her guilt. "I didn't think you'd ever stop loving me," she said, voice breaking. "I thought I could always come back, that you'd always be there." I looked down at her, then slowly shook my head. "I don't even recognize you anymore." She looked up, face twisted, desperate, hollow. "Don't say that. Please. You have to feel something." I nodded once. "I do. Relief. And then I closed the door. No slamming. No final words. Just the click of a life moving on without her. The kids were in the living room, laughing at a cartoon, wrapped in blankets I washed the day before. Our home was warm, whole, safe. And hers, whatever she had left, was nothing but echoes and what-ifs. Thank you for listening to my story. I appreciate you sticking through every step of it. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and tell me, did it hit the way you hoped it would?